Okay, so hi, we're City Science, and we're excited to give you an update on our AI generative design tool for low-cost district heating networks. So we have two of our team on the call today, Dominique, who's been helping manage the project, and Andy, our technical lead. So I'll just very quickly introduce City Science. So City Science's main objective is to aid decarbonisation at the national, city, and building level scales. We do this via building software tools, as well as offering consultancy services and research services. And we focus on these services in the three major CO2 emitting sectors of transport, domestic, and commercial. So the talk today will look at our AI generative design tool built as part of the MEDApps project, and is split into three sections. So an overview of the need for the tool, some insight into what we produced as part of the project, and some insight into our current case study. So for some context, as a landscape between 2014 and 2019, carbon emissions in energy production have decreased 54%, in industry have decreased 12%, but in buildings have increased 6%. The majority of energy used in commercial and domestic buildings is for space and water heating, and heating is the major obstacle for decarbonising buildings at scale. So there are two approaches for the UK to decarbonise heat and buildings: reduce the amount of energy used, and the other is to decarbonise the heat source. So the UK plans to address the shift to low carbon heating by a major scaling up of the number of properties served by district heating networks. The government's 2050 target of 90 terawatt hours of heat served by heat networks per annum accounts for around about 20% of all domestic heat. According to Hindu funding applications, only 25 large-scale district heating network feasibility studies have taken place in about the last 3 years. Our modelling suggests that only 54% of these have progressed to build, providing the run rate deficit shown in our graph. The key question becomes, how do we plug this deficit, both via increasing the number of studies conducted and increasing the number of studies progressing to build? So in phase one, we documented the common process steps in the design and commercialization of district heating networks, the stakeholders involved in each of those steps, as well as the stakeholder interactions. We focused in on design stages 1 and 2 as part of this process, and we utilised user-centric design to develop and test a value proposition around stakeholder key gain and pain points. So just to list a couple of these, our value proposition included improved network design, optimization based on user preferences, built-in interoperability with existing tools, drastically reducing the design time, resulting in more designs to choose from, improved end customer experience via clear reporting and access to designs earlier. That's just to label a few. So in phase 2, we've continued to utilise user research to further refine and update our service offerings, with help of detailed interaction with a selection of key local authorities and consultancies. We've worked especially closely with the Energy Systems Catapult Insights team and local authorities to design a service level blueprint, which effectively shows how our AI generative design tool can be utilised in the current district heating network feasibility and master planning studies. Have worked with a range of consultancies to help validate our tools and further refine the consultancy journeys. And further details have also emerged how current district heating network process and grant awards are changing as well. So currently, or until recently, the two major grant schemes open to local authorities were the Heat Network Delivery Unit at the design stages and the Heat Network Investment Project in the commercialisation stages. So the Heat Network Delivery Unit is a grant open to local authorities in England and Wales to provide support in planning stages of heat network development. We've ensured our tool can be set up to have Hindu compliant outputs and that modelling methods adhere to the Heat Networks Code of Practice. So grant funding in the commercialisation phase has recently changed. So HNIP has been replaced by the Green Heat Networks Innovation Fund, This grant is open to public, private and third-party applicants in England, and it focuses on funding larger low-carbon heat networks. There are a range of gateway requirements for funding, and we've ensured our tool can be set up to select designs that satisfy these gateway requirements at the design stages. So changes to the design stages may also be on horizon. So the typical three-stage process may be replaced with a zoning and feasibility study process. So zoning studies are currently taking place in England and may change the way that heat mapping and master planning is currently approached. So we're keeping a close eye on this process. So if it comes to fruition, we can update our tool to effectively integrate with it. So moving on to part 2 of the talk. So 4 modular tools were built as part of this project. So on the top left, a first of its kind heat demand model. This can estimate heat demand of both domestic and non-domestic buildings down to individual building levels across Great Britain. An energy center optimization tool on the top right. The use case for this tool is for existing heat networks whose heat generators are coming to the end of their life. We can then estimate the best replacements. So in the bottom left, we have automated network routing. So given a set of demand and supply locations, this can find the optimal route for the network. And then on the bottom right, we have whole district heating network optimization module. So this tool is for finding the range of optimal designs across multiple conflicting objectives. So we've ensured that our modules can integrate with common and used GIS software, enabling full access to the powerful spatial analysis tools available within these packages. Underlying our spatial models is Ordnance Survey data, such as master map topology layers, site layers, address-based layers, which have been used because of their robustness and accuracy against alternatives, enhanced attribution, and its allowance for interoperability with geospatial unique references such as TOIDs and UPRNs. So as part of the automated routing tool, we've also developed automated land classification. A number of classification types can be produced, including dig type, ownership status, and obstacle status. So this is for things like utilities, buildings, and rivers, etc. So these classifications are utilized by our network costing tool to estimate the network routing costs. Networks can either be drawn by hand, imported, or automatically drawn by our automated routing tool. Land classifications and associated costs can be easily updated, and network routing costs automatically updated as well. So if the automated routing tool is rerun with a new optimize, once updated, the automated routing tool can be rerun and new optimized networks found. So as stated before, our heat demand model estimates heat demands at the individual property level at hourly temporal resolution and by different end users. So nationally and locally available data sources are utilized to produce default data, which are then superseded by further data collection. And heat demand data can be visualized at the building level as heat density, linear heat density, to identify network promising areas as well. So property level peak heat demands for different end uses are also estimated for sizing components and for sizing counterfactual heat generation options, i.e. heat pumps for each individual building, for example. So energy center potential locations can be drawn into a new layer or uploaded. I've ringed them in blue so they're easy to see at this scale. The energy center potential locations themselves being the purple areas within the plots. This can include sites not yet built or attributed to existing heat sources, which potentially could be connected. So if we zoom into one of these areas surrounding the energy center, so we can either draw a network manually, which is quite straightforward using the snapping tools in GIS software, or we can let the network optimizer automatically choose a route for us. So once that's done, we can launch our generative design suite and upload both GIS layers we've drawn and supporting files, file listing network asset options, i.e. heat generators and storage types, for example. So the generative design setup allows for the user to input objectives, shown on the left here. So these are things you typically want to maximize or minimize. The min max here is just for speeding up the solution. So this might include things like maximizing your net present value or internal rate of return, or wanting to minimize capital costs, for example. We also have constraints. So for example, you might want to constrain simple payback time or capital costs. And then we also have decision variables. So I'll explain a little bit more about decision variables in a second. But if we go to our next slide. So if we click on pipes, for example, we can explore all the different pipe options that are available to us. And if we only want to use pipes from a certain manufacturer, we can filter out those pipes. Or if we only wanted to choose certain types of heat generators, for example, because some may be known to be unsuitable, we can filter those out too. So once we've finished our setup, we can launch our optimizer. And results will be returned in the form of a parallel coordinate plot, which will display how different objectives are traded off against one another. We can also view this in tabular form, which will display any constraints which have been breached and the type of heat generators which are used for a particular solution. So if we aren't happy with any of our results, or we want to hone in on particular areas, we can update our objectives and constraints and relaunch the optimizer, allowing for a human-in-the-loop experience. So once we've found the solutions that we want to explore in more detail, we can simulate them and dump these to results files. The results include a range of outputs which are both useful for solution comparison, further analysis, and for Hindu project packs. We output a range of summary details for each solution, splitting into solution statistics, key network KPIs, as well as financial KPIs. And all of our solutions can be output to Excel and geographical files, which can either be passed on to clients and stakeholders, used internally for further analysis, or used in evidence bases for grant funding. So a key part of our value proposition is being able to provide financial overview from a number of different stakeholders' perspectives. Hence, we can output files which enable financial analysis for a number of different contract types and roles. For an example, we can, for an example, we can output tailored financial analysis from project owners' perspectives, which provides information such as IRR and net present value over the whole project. And we can also look at the relevant business cases for site developers' point of view as another example. So these outputs can then be used to satisfy key stakeholders' requirements and improve the amount of buy-in. So all our solutions include sensitivity analysis and enabling key risks to be flagged. The tool is able to produce sensitivity analysis over a range of different variables such as fuel price, cost of counterfactuals, and capital costs as a few examples. So moving on to part 3 of our talk. So for the case study, so we've been working closely with Portsmouth City Council as part of our case study at the Charles Dickens Community Heat Network. The heat network was built in 2003 and the CHP plant has come to the end of its lifetime. So Portsmouth City Council wants to assess the available options for its replacement. So City Science are running our Energy Centre Optimisation module to both help assess the possible replacement options and to hone in on desirable solutions. So this has been a multi-stage process of which we've already carried out quite a few. So determining a client's high-level requirements, of which they may not be completely sure about when you start the process. Refining the scope once we've understood their high-level requirements. Data availability and gap analysis. So this can provide basically a go, no go, depending on what data they've collected as part of their network operation. General and site-specific policy review, So this lets us understand what their key objectives are as a local authority, as well as those that are particular to the site. A grant and funding review to see what grants and funding are available for that particular site. Initial constraint and preference collection. So this is the first start of interacting with the tool. A wide option exploration to allow them to see the type of available options which are available to them. And we've got to the stage of them so far. So once we've explored the total available options, we can then understand requirement refinement based on their feedback. Then we can launch the tool into option refinement and finally delivery. So just to reiterate, the Energy Center Optimizer has the same sort of interface as the Network Optimizer. And we'll use these to, first of all, on the left, input the objective functions, and to also input the constraints. And again, we launch our tool and come up with a range of different potential options, which we can explore both as a parallel coordinate plot, as a tabular form, and we can output detailed solutions we're interested in. So just to summarize what we've done in our project, we've enabled key benefits via process automation, and we estimate that this will speed up network feasibility studies by up to 50%, reduce the cost of feasibility studies, and educate and enable less experienced users to test feasibility studies. Improved solution design. So by reducing the number of iterations required, increasing the success rate of feasibility studies, and allowing for more advanced network designs. And by stakeholder tailoring. So we're trying to increase stakeholder buy-in and allow far less iterations needed to satisfy all stakeholder requirements. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy, for this excellent presentation. So please drop any questions for City Science in the chat. I have first question for you, Andy. It is basically, we have seen that your tool requires, it seems that your tools require a certain level of skills to be used. So who do you think will be the main users of the tool? And how are you planning to or commercializing them?
Yeah, so initially we're probably going to be, well, it depends on the particular type of tool. So for example, the heat demand API, we can either use internally or we can offer external consultancies use of that tool. For things like the full network routing, we'll probably start using them internally, either partnering with other consultancies or offering initial consultancy ourselves to fully understand the process before offering the tool as a commercial tool for other consultancies to use. So that way we're able to test our tool, refine it further as part of consultancy journeys, and then actually get something with minimal viable products we'll be offering as an actual tool service.
Right. So it will be the consultants who work with either local authority or
yeah. So we'll probably initially provide consultancy support services to help speed up consultancies' journeys and improve their outcomes. So we have a number of interested parties which are interested in partnering with us so far. We don't think that we can offer well, from past experience, we think this is the best way to get a tool that people want. So we've done a lot of user research as actually part of the project. We've applied case studies, but offering a tool before you've actually done the full process and been involved with the full process is high risk and usually doesn't lead to great outcomes or sometimes doesn't lead to great outcomes. So we think a lower risk approach is to partner with consultancies to improve their design process and slowly build minimum viable products.
Great. And you mentioned briefly in your slides that you expect the tool to speed up the process of roughly 50%.
Yeah.
Do you have an estimate for what that means in terms of economics? Like,
yeah,
how much
At the moment, I don't think we're quite at 50%, but with a little bit more build out, which we're planning to put in, we think we can speed up certainly the technical parts of the project by about 50%. If we take a feasibility study, maybe in the range of about 80 to 100,000 pounds, we're probably looking at potential cost cutting of around about 30,000 pounds or 20,000 pounds.
Sorry, Andy, we lost you there.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, yes.
Yeah, so we're looking to, so we think we can speed up the technical parts of the feasibility study design process, and also reduce the number of iterations, and improve when on-site data is collected, we think we can improve the timescale in which that's integrated into the process and resimulated. So we estimate that probably we can save around about, probably around 20 to 30,000 pounds per feasibility study process, potentially. And I think that might improve in the future as well. Great.
And you mentioned that one of the packages or tools that we've seen is actually an API, the heat demand API. Is that already available?
So we've tested that on Icebreaker One's Open Energy platform. We're currently looking at commercialization options for it. So we've done detailed commercialization planning for our district heating network tools and our energy center optimizer. We're currently looking at price points, etc., for the heat demand model.
Right. So there's more the pricing. And in terms of the output from the other tools, are you expecting to have API to give the possibility to the user to export some of those outputs into other GIS platforms?
Yeah, so I mean, our outputs, we've made sure, so we've done a range of different testing of outputs. So we output in formats which are required by HMDU, which are mainly in Excel or GIS-based formats. So they can, but the GIS ones, such as GeoJSONs, can be easily uploaded into any GIS software, such as QGIS or ArcGIS.
Yeah, all right, cool. I was thinking more about some of the other tools that we have seen in this program and the possibility of actually integrating your outputs into other.
So yeah, I mean, in terms of, so we certainly we reference them by OS TOIDs and UPRNs, and so that as long as the other tool is able to make a reference to those geospatial reference IDs, you can map components, you can map land uses, you can map buildings to those tools.
Great, that's great. Then some questions on your generative design model, that is the network optimizer, I'm understanding. How have you validated your model, and how? Yeah.
So effectively, validation has been via expert users. So we've gone through a validation process with experts in the field from the consultancies, and we've validated both the simulation models, the district heating simulation models, or the various different component models, and the AI optimizer model. So we've done that in a number of different stages. So we validated the mathematical models. We validated, so that was basically validated on graphs and what you would expect as key outputs from those mathematical models. Then we went through code production, and we then devised a range of unit tests around those models, or end-to-end tests around each module. which were again validated with expert users for particular use cases and end use cases. Then we had integration tests when we join models together. So that's when you're joining one module to another module. How do you make sure it's actually correct? And then we had end-to-end tests with experts checking across the whole process. So that includes all the simulation models and sense checking the outputs of the optimization suite as well.
And
so it's been quite thorough.
Yeah, and in terms of the output, have you also validated the network routing costs?
Yeah, so in terms of the modules, so you can basically, you mean in terms of sense checking?
Yep.
Yeah, so what we've done there is we've checked the model that when you input and output something, you get the correct output for a given input. We allow some default cost data, which is supplied by a CSV file, which you can input, and that gives ballpark estimates which are approximately right for each land classification. But we also allow the user to update those estimates if their network is slightly more, or is deemed to be slightly more expensive per meter dug, for example. So we have default outputs which will give you the right ballpark estimates, and we allow the user to update those as well.
Great. Right. Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you for this presentation and for answering my question. Thank you so much. And I guess we're about to reach also the end of this Q&A. I would invite all the attendees to drop any questions for City Science in the chat. I believe Andy will stay with us until the end of this event. And then, yeah, we have another 10 minutes break now to give you opportunity to give to the attendees the opportunity to grab a drink or answer some emails or whatever you want to do in your break. And we will see you at 11:30. Thank you, Andy, and see you soon.
Thank you.